Hello, my friends. Katie Day with the Movement to Texas team here in Houston, here for another episode of the Movement to Texas podcast. Joined this week by a good friend in the Austin, Texas market, my friend, the real Jeremy Knight. What's going on, Jeremy?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the warm welcome. Normally, we go at it, Austin versus Houston. So that was a warm welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, and I mean, I figured we should start off with, pleasantries and go from there.
I
The
love it.
entire point of the conversation today is talking about Austin and Houston and just Texas in general. So figured we could start off nice and see where things take us. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Pretty soon we'll be talking about how the Astros are cheaters and how hot and humid it is in Houston. So yeah, I appreciate the pleasantries.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Adam joining us from Maui. Aloha. Still afternoon out there, so thank you for joining us. Yeah, man. So I know we were together last week for a real estate conference. So it was always good to see you. What's
Yep.
been going on in Austin? What's new? I saw you posted a couple things today on some like newsworthy breaking news of some tech stuff down there.
Yeah. So what I like to do on my channel and on Instagram and all that fun stuff is kind of, break the breaking news of Austin because, you have so much going on in such a little city and you constantly are hearing about companies moving. So uh, secretly, so the city of Hutto is just outside of Austin. It's about, a 35-minute drive to downtown. They secretly met with two companies and won't say who those two companies are, but it would be a $3 billion investment in Austin. So I imagine it has something to do with Tesla or with one of the other companies that just moved in here. And so there's a huge, huge chunk of land that's just east of Hutto. So for people looking to invest, I mean, everybody keeps asking me about Hutto. That's a perfect time to buy in Hutto if these things work out. Now, nothing's inked, but so I like to break fun, stuff like that and talk about the positives and the cons of Austin. Obviously, we joke back and forth, but both Houston and both Austin are going to definitely have some good pros and some good cons. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think one of the things that we've seen a lot of over the past, year and a half is like a lot of people have sold in Austin to move to Houston, right?
Yep.
Despite the jokes that we kind of throw back and forth. I mean, our average price point in December 2021, the average sales price for single family homes was 392 and the median was 319. But I think yours is in like the fives, right?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself there. Yeah, so the median for the Austin area, so if you look at the MSA, which is kind of all of, from pretty much Williamson County down to Kyle, Buda, San Marcos area, that's called our MSA. So our MSA closing out the end of the year was 476. That's for the MSA for the median area. If you look at Austin specifically, the city of Austin, it was 555 on the dot. So yeah, if you're comparing prices, Houston to Austin, Austin is substantially higher, but I'm sure there's plenty of areas in Houston where, prices are higher. You're a little bit nicer neighborhoods than others. But the thing we run into, and I'm sure Katie can attest and talk about, is that some of these newer areas, if you're looking at the MSA and you look at some of those areas, the challenge you run into is some of those tax rates are still like 3% tax rate. So you might be getting a little bit cheaper of a home or less expensive of a home compared to Austin by buying that 475 price point, but compared to 455. But the challenge you run into is if it's a 3% tax rate versus 2% tax rate, do you really have savings there? And you're further out, so you're paying more gas money and all that fun stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah,
long
for
answer.
sure.
Sorry.
Wouldn't expect anything less from you, my dude. Matt was asking, how high do you think the price per acre of land will go in proximity to Samsung? I don't know. That's a
That's
pretty
crazy.
specific question, but I mean, I think, land is probably already increasing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Samsung's interesting because there's already land next to Samsung now that's built. And I can tell you this 30 acres just sold for $7 million. So you can do the math. And that's in Austin. So if you're looking at Samsung in Taylor, I'm sure there's a lot of companies that even before Samsung announced have been jumping in that Taylor area. So I don't think it's going to be very cheap to buy in Taylor where the new Samsung plant is.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about just like kind of Austin versus Houston and kind of
Sure.
pros and cons of both. I mean, I think, we're seeing a lot of people moving in from California, New York, Illinois, Florida, I mean, all over really into Texas. And people do often ask like, hey, we're just trying to buy in Texas. And I'm like, okay, well, like you're gonna need to narrow it down. Like, yes, I can sell in Texas, but I don't go to Austin, I don't go to Dallas. Um, so what are some pros and cons that you normally like high level talk to people about? You know,
Yeah, so it's funny is I get the call all the time. Hey, we're up to 350. We want a 2,000 square foot house, and we want to be 30 minutes to Austin. And I'm like, that doesn't exist.
yeah,
350. I mean, here's a problem Austin's running into, and I think I said this on somebody else's podcast the other day, is that Austin's running into kind of an identity crisis. Obviously, you have big tech companies moving in, like Tesla, Samsung. All these companies bringing in more, tech-driven jobs. So we're kind of running into identity crisis. We were this small, sleepy town that didn't want to grow, and now we're kind of being forced to grow by the natural growth. And so we're running into issues there. Obviously, I mean, we had a pretty substantial homeless population for a while. And voters kind of changed some rules, voted to change some rules. So that was one thing that for a long time. In fact, I just did a video on my channel talking about the regrets of moving to Austin. So there's that. People, I can't talk about crime stats because I really don't know what the crime stats are, to be completely honest with you. But I've heard people going back and forth each way that crime's gone up and all this stuff. I don't have the stats in front of me to tell you yes or no, but that might be an issue. So, I mean, there's things like that. But the overall expansion of Austin has become a problem because with this quick growth that we're seeing, more people are moving in. And, there's people that are saying the market's going to crash. The market's going to crash. There's not enough people, not as many people moving to Austin or wherever as they say there is. Yeah, there is. There's a lot of people moving to Austin. And so that growth that we're seeing is causing people to move further and further out, which means prices are getting more expensive. And we're really running into an affordability problem. I mean, it just on its face, yes, Houston's a bigger city and a little less expensive depending where you are. But Austin is a smaller city, not the same infrastructure, costs more to get around just because it's harder. The traffic's, I mean, probably comparable to Houston, but it's expensive. It's expensive to live in Austin. So there's that. But I mean, look, Austin's a great city. You take all that away and you go, oh, yeah, it's still a good city.
well, and a lot of the things that you're like not complaining about, but a lot of things that you're bringing up as like cons is like, in any major city there's going to be crime, and in any major city there's
Yeah.
going to be traffic. Like,
Yep.
and as cities experience, population growth, like the infrastructure is going to be tested, and hopefully, they'll continue to make adjustments and add extra lanes on highways and different things like that. So, I mean, I think that whenever we talk about pros and cons, like a lot of the cons are like things that you're gonna have to deal with everywhere, right? I
Right.
mean,
And I think it's a little bit more in Austin. It's a bigger issue because we are a smaller city seeing rapid growth. If
yeah,
you were a bigger city, it would be kind of a normal thing. Like if you look at Houston, every time I drive to Houston, the traffic's terrible. There's construction everywhere, and it sucks. Well, Austin is going through that same thing, but we're smaller, so it's even more like emphasized when you have delays and have issues because we are a smaller city. But you know, we don't have the Astros, so that's always a positive
yeah.
for
No, I mean
Austin.
that's
The
good. You guys
speeding
don't have
Astros.
any
Yeah,
pro sports teams, but Houston
lies.
does.
100% lies. We have an MLS team that was mediocre at best, but we have an MLS
I didn't
team.
know you
So
guys had. Is it what like FC Austin or what's? Do you know the name?
yeah, yeah,
Is it FC Austin or are you just
hmm
agreeing with me so I stop
yeah.
asking you questions?
Football Club Austin. Yeah,
Okay, all right, that's cool.
yeah.
Um, you're funny.
And the Buffalo Bills are probably going to move here, and we'll probably get. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be crazy here once we get the Buffalo Bills. So I'm just kidding. I don't know that we're getting the Buffalo Bills. Don't take that as fact.
I was like,
But
I have not heard this.
there is. So we broke the news on my YouTube channel, and because a developer that had ties to people basically said Disney bought all this land and Disney was bringing an amusement park to Austin.
Yeah.
Now, we've not been able to fully confirm that. We do know that the specific land that he talked about on that podcast was sold. Apparently, there was ties. So, but after getting some more details and information, it looks like what they're going to do is put in a really big, like Sun City style community up in like Gerald, Texas. So that's
Yeah.
so don't want to get sued because I'm not the one that broke the news. I got the tape.
Play it back. Play it back.
Yeah. I
Matt's
just shook
asking, when
my
do you
head and
think?
nodded.
Yeah, you're like, when do you think Houston houses will be on average as expensive as Austin? So
That's gonna be a while.
and from where Austin sits today, Houston would have to experience some really massive price appreciation to catch up, right? So, as far as where they are today, I mean, we saw about 13-14% price appreciation, in 2021 versus 2020. I predict 5 to 7% in Houston this year. But for the amount of tech that's moving to Austin, like, I think that you guys are going to continue to see massive price appreciation down there.
Well, let's go down this rabbit hole. So
Let's
look
dig
at
in.
Houston. Yeah, look at Houston. I mean, what, 4 million people? Is that
Plus
right?
or
In
minus, yeah.
Houston? Plus or minus. Okay. Austin, we're not even a million. Or we're right at a million, something like that. But if you look at Austin, we have right now going into January 0.5 of a month of inventory.
Yeah.
And looking at the inventory today, we're at, no joke, Katie, when I saw this morning, I literally fell over. We were like 1,900 units for our entire MLS. I would
Yeah.
say on average, we have with a month and a half, 2-month inventory, we're about 5,000 units. We're at 1,900 units, and it's probably going to drop lower than that because usually Tuesdays a day, most stuff goes under contract,
Yeah.
or
After the
post this
weekend.
contract. So if you think about that, what's the months of inventory in Houston right now?
So in Houston right now, we're sitting at 1.4 months of inventory as of
Okay.
yesterday. And just to clarify, months of inventory basically means that if homes continue to sell at the pace they've been selling, no more homes come on the market. When would we run out of homes? So for Houston, it's 1.4. You said it's point what?
Point 0.5. I imagine when the January numbers come out, it'll probably be 0.3 or 0.4 of a month.
So that's like weeks of inventory.
Yes.
If all of your homes sold and nothing else came on the market. I mean, I think that's a great opportunity though for people that already live in Austin, right? Like, I know a lot of people that have moved here from Austin had like either healthcare jobs or they were already working remote, and they're like, we're sitting in a house that's appreciated by 50 or 75K over the past year or 2 years. Like, they're selling and then coming here with that equity, to put down. So,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
where
and
were
that's
you
the
going with the
same thing
months of
in
inventory
Austin.
though?
No, so we're talking about when will Houston prices catch up to Austin prices. Houston is going to have to see a massive reduction in inventory to see what we're seeing in Austin.
Yeah.
And that's the point I'm making. You have 3 times the amount of inventory as compared to Austin. If you just go by months of inventory, you said 1.4, 1.5 months.
Yeah.
We're at 0.4, probably
Well,
0.3. So that's why prices are escalating so high in Austin. Even and when we finally like leveled off last year and prices actually started coming down in Austin, we got up to like 1.1 months inventory. So
yeah.
it's going to take us to double. We'd have to double our inventory from where it's at now and to actually see prices stabilize. And that's still not stabilized, right?
Well,
That's just where it's not crazy.
yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think the other thing to keep in mind too is like, for us, that 1.4 months of inventory is like 13,000, 14,000 listings. You just said that yours is like 1,400, right?
Yeah,
So you have like
1,900. It's
1,900.
1,900, but 600 or 700 of those are new build homes that aren't even ready to be built. They're just on the
Yeah.
MLS. So
Yeah.
they won't be done until June, July anyway.
Yeah. So speaking of companies moving, I know you mentioned Tesla and a few other companies moving to the Austin area. Exxon's officially moving their headquarters to Spring. I think it's going to be over the next few years, though. I think one of the articles I read was like 2023 was like when it would finally move. So it's like just north of downtown, not just north. That's 30, 45 minutes north of downtown. And they moved some of it, but they're officially moving all of it to Spring. As far as honing in on that move for relocation, like, when they initially had announced this, basically they had preferred relocation companies and agencies that they were using. So I don't know that, as an agent, you'd really be able to hop in on that unless you're already working for a relocation approved brokerage. But I
You want
mean,
to know how to do it? You make videos talking about it.
well, but what I was gonna say is I think
Yeah.
talking about it, one, and then you'll have direct people reaching out to you, and then also like, connecting with agents in, Irving that would be selling, homes of Exxon people too is also another, in.
We had signed a contract with one of those names you spoke of earlier, to reload their people, and it's
Yeah.
because I created like 3 videos talking about it. So, but so let me ask you about that. So Exxon's coming in. How many employees or how many people is
Are
that?
moving.
How many jobs, yeah, are coming there? Direct
Um,
jobs.
well, yeah, that's what like let me see because I know they obviously have not they obviously so they have a huge campus already.
Okay.
I love when I click on paywall articles
Oh, that's
on.
awesome, isn't it?
So annoying.
So as you're looking that up, I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. So the 2 companies just announced that, or they just announced that are going to bring about 1,600 jobs to Austin. It's going to take them 2 to 3 years for them to actually have all of those employees here. Tesla is a prime example. They initially announced 10,000 employees were coming here, and then everybody flooded into the market. All these investors did, and those 10,000 employees, maybe they have a third of those actual employees here, maybe half.
Yeah.
And so and that was that was 2020. They announced it. We're in 2022. They just started production of the Model Y. So you're looking at a lot of these jobs aren't even here yet for the Model Y, and that's before the Cybertruck. There's also all these other companies that are bringing in employees here to facilitate that. So if you look at Exxon, did you look and see how many jobs it was?
So as of right now, there are 10,000 people that are working in
Mhm.
Spring that opened in 2014. The people that work at Irving and Dallas is only 250 per ExxonMobil.
Okay.
So it's
So
not a huge move.
yes, but that's still going to bring in jobs. And then think about, Airbnbs and things like that. There's going to be people that are going to have to come, work for 2 or 3 weeks. So the investment potential there is actually still pretty good investment potential. And I like personally, being that I'm not from Houston or know much about Houston, I've driven through Spring and it's nice.
You're
It's
funny.
okay.
No, and I mean they've been moving, their operations here. So,
And
I think that
how
go
many
ahead.
jobs did HP bring there? Because is the Hewlett Packard once at Houston, right?
So they haven't fully moved either.
Yeah.
Like all
And
of
that's the
these, it's
thing.
like that's the thing is like, like they announce and like this will be happening until 2025, like so I think it was like thousands. It was more in the thousands number, but
Yeah.
it wasn't also their full operations. They were still keeping some operations in the San Jose Silicon Valley area, right? So it's like people hear the headline and then don't read the article and,
So
um
so how many people a year are moving? So if you're looking at trends, I don't know if you have these numbers. I've looked at them recently for Austin. So if you look at the number of trends of people moving to Austin every year, we've increased like 3%. But in order to increase 3%, it was like 50,000, 56,000 one year, 60,000 the next, 65 the next, 75 this last year. What's the trend of people moving to Houston? Because I would imagine it's got to be pretty high because it's a little more affordable than, and let's be honest, like between you and I, it's nicer than Dallas. So,
I mean, that's the one thing we can agree on. Like we've talked about this, with some of our friends. Like,
yeah,
the one thing you and I can agree on is that we both hate Dallas.
yeah,
Well, so interestingly enough, like let me share my screen here. And this is just by money. It's not by people, but like, the tax migrations,
yeah.
right? So like we actually are net negative as far as money, right? But if you look at all of these are all other than Travis County. These are all Houston suburbs, right?
Hmm. It's
Isn't that
interesting that
interesting?
Travis County is negative, but if you look at the counties next to Travis County, so here's what's interesting about Travis County is that if you look at the areas outside of it, see they're all green. The reason why they're all green is because people are migrating out of Austin and moving further away
Yeah.
and moving to like Hayes County. They're moving to Williamson County. There's still a couple smaller counties outside that. So Blanco County.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's always a good one. Let's see.
Interesting.
Interest rates. Interest rates.
Yeah, this is going to be an issue for the next really 2 to 3 years.
Well, and so I think one of the points that like I've been making to a lot of buyers, especially as they're locking in rates and they're like, at 3.25 or 3 and change, I mean, 3.25 is still such a good interest rate. Under 4% is still such a good interest rate.
Yeah, I need your lenders because it's like 4% everywhere I look now.
That's unfortunate. I mean, rates have ticked up. Like I have a client that's under contract now that they were talking about potentially, terminating and moving on to another property. And like the lender is like, well, you're locked in right now at 3.25. If you terminate and go under contract again this week, it would be at 3.5. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I haven't yet.
What's funny is we had a client go under contract in a house for like 1.05 million, right? 1,050,000. And we found out that the square foot was off. Right. And so they were like considering backing out. And, we went through and looked at everything and it said like, hey, look, here's the deal. Even and the thing is that it appraised. It's still appraised for the value. And so it's tough because now like the big house that you were buying wasn't as big. It's still a big house. But we talked about it and we're like, hey, if we go find another house for $1,050,000, right, with the same square foot, which is going to be hard to find in this market, your interest rate went from 3.25 to 4. Like, let's look at this, and we had to break it down a little bit. And I think that's a tough thing that buyers, and to the question here, that's the thing that buyers are going to have to go through this year is it worth me buying? Right? Is the market still going to increase at the rate that it's been increasing, or still increase? Is it going to crash? And even with this interest rate, does that make sense? And so that's something buyers are really going to have to put pen to paper on this year. And look, if prices still keep going up, then yeah, it was a smart play. If prices go down for some reason, then it wasn't the smart play, yet you're still locked in at a fixed rate and not an adjustable rate. One thing that I kind of get a huge kick out of, and you probably hear people say this when it comes to rate, is they go, oh, well, when I bought a house in 1990, my interest rate was 11%. So 4% is nothing. Your house in 1990 was 150 grand.
Yeah, I mean,
but difference.
There is, yes. But I think that it's also like relative in that, like, if you ask any one of your parents what they paid for their home, they had a double-digit interest rate, right? So like, I think that like, yeah, it was definitely cheaper. Yeah, inflation, yeah, all of the things. But I think buying a home is a little bit of a hedge against inflation, right? So I mean, I think, if you're planning on staying in a city for, 3 to 5+ years, even at 4%, it still makes sense to buy. I think for us in the lower price points, we may start to see buyers getting squeezed. But for those that have, significant liquid cash and assets and stuff like that, like they're still going to buy because it makes more sense than paying a similar amount in rent.
Yeah, I mean, just the yearly tax deductions or make it worth it depending on what your interest or your property taxes are. Because if you go over 10,000 a year property taxes, you can't deduct that extra over 10,000 as of right now.
Yeah,
that's the sub-tax.
So I think Texas, Houston, is a very diverse place. I am Asian. We can't really comment a ton on demographics and things like that, but like if you go to our website and take a look at our team, like we have people of all ethnicities. And I mean, I think that Houston is actually one of like the most languages are spoken in Houston than anywhere in the world.
What's interesting about Texas, and not to go down this crazy rabbit hole, what's interesting about Texas, there's a perception of Texas, right? And I won't say what that perception is, but once you're here, what's interesting about Texas is that it is changing because so many Californians are moving here, but the people here are so incredibly, I'm from California, so that's what inside joke. But the people here are so incredibly friendly that things like that can be an issue. Sure. I'm not going to discount that at all, but I think you find that people are a little more accepting and nicer than people give them credit for in Texas. Now, if you want to look up an area's diversity, right, how diverse it is, go to bestplaces.net, and there is actually a section that'll break down a city's makeup. So
Demographics and stuff.
bestplaces.net is one of the best places you can go to get information about a city. Some of it's a little outdated. You can get voting history, you can get diversity, you can get school ratings, you can get what the cost of living is, all that good stuff. So that's a good one I use. And this one's a good one too.
Texas is the number 2 most diverse state in the US per the census.
Yeah.
Interesting enough. And that's from Wallet Hub.
Yeah. Like the diversity of Austin's pretty, one thing I see, and if you look at the comments on my channel and we talk about these things, a lot of people will say it's not diverse enough. And that's probably true, but it's not like it's all one, right? And so I think that's what people need to understand is if you go use the sources like, Wallet Hub or use like bestplaces.net, I recommend before you move anywhere, whether it's Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, McAllen, like do your due diligence, right? And use those resources.
Yeah. Once again, the thing that we can all agree on is boo on Dallas.
Yeah.
What else? What else? Go ahead.
Funny side bit. I'm a 49er fan. So everybody's like, oh, cancel this guy. But I'm a 49er fan. And I love that, like, on Monday, all these Dallas fans are giving me a hard time. I'm like, short-term memory serves me correct. We beat you 2 games ago to get to this spot. So Dallas.
I mean, I grew up in DC, so football's not great for me.
You have the Washington football team.
Yeah.
And your baseball team at least won a World Series.
The Nationals or the Astros?
Yeah. Well, the Astros got to have an asterisk on that win, so they cheated.
I'm not actually really an Astros fan. I enjoy going to games. You've been to Minute Maid, right?
Yeah, I've been several times. I love going to Astros games.
It's a fun stadium to go to. It's a good ballpark.
Yeah, no, I go. We go at least 2 to 3 games a year. So I love baseball, so it doesn't matter where it's at.
As far as crime, I'd recommend looking up crime stats on HPD or the sites that Jeremy mentioned. That's not really something that
Austin Crime Map is a good one. I think they probably have Houston Crime Map. That would be a good one. Yeah, I mean, I just put out a video talking about the regrets of moving to Austin, right? And so this is one thing
we talked about. Must have been a long video.
It was. Yeah, it was like 2.5 seconds. It was really quick. But that was one of the resources I gave people because really realtors were not. And so some people were really upset that like realtor.com, I don't know if Zillow, some of these companies started taking crime stats off of their websites. And they're saying, well, realtors are taking it off. Well, really, realtors, not those websites, but realtors, we can be subject to redlining rules and things like that. So anytime a client says, well, what about this area? I just point them to those resources.
Yeah, for sure. No, fair housing rules can't
give
you specific neighborhoods and things like that. Cool. What else should people know about Austin if they're thinking about moving to Texas?
Yeah, I mean, it's far enough away from Houston, but it could use a couple more hours.
It's nice because when I go, no, what are some other things that people should know?
Yeah, so here's one of the greatest things about Austin. I'm sure you have similar. You were talking earlier. We were talking about ice houses, right? In Houston,
we were.
What's really great about Austin in general, even if you just come to visit and check it out. There's a lot of generally outdoor things to do. And so like if you're going to come in and go to a brewery, a lot of the brewery does outdoorsy stuff. So there's kids running around, stuff, you got, food, really decent, pretty good food. It's not as good as Houston. I will lament that Austin's food is not as good as San Antonio. It's not as good as Houston. It's probably better than Dallas, but yeah. So there's a lot of really cool outdoor things to do. And that's what's amazing is, on a Saturday, you go out, you go to a brewery, you go to, a distillery and you hang out in the afternoon. If you're not into, drinking or whatever, then there's a lot of outdoor, there's a place in, Wimberley that's right outside of Austin that it's called Llama something or other. And they literally have a spot where kids can like feed llamas and they have animals outside. You can hang out, eat and do whatever. So a lot of fun stuff.
Were you there a few weeks ago? Is that where?
I was,
Yeah.
and I was
Okay.
not the one. I was not the one that passed the
No, no, no.
thing we're not allowed
Yeah.
to talk about. Yeah.
No, but that I saw some pictures and it looks like it was a fun time. Is where I was going
Yeah,
with that.
kids loved it. So, I mean, as far as a family city, there's a lot of good family things to do. I always get this question on my channel, like, is it a good place for singles? I'm pretty sure if you Google it and pull it up, like Austin was like one of the best places for singles at one point. So if there was, it's not me saying that, it's from a website, but Google it. So I mean, look, there's a lot of good things, but the problem with Austin is more of a pass-through city now, right? So you have a lot of people who are coming in for tech. They come into Austin for a year and they bounce out and go somewhere
Transient.
else, right? And so yeah, a little more transient. So I will say this: the people being here 10 years, one of the greatest things that I've noticed from day one is how amazing the people are. So when I, started my real estate business, I started literally door knocking, like, hey, we got an open house coming up, come visit the open house, stuff like that. Every single time, Katie, I can't even exaggerate this. Every single time somebody would invite me in, or like, hey, do you want a beer? And like, we would like sit and have a beer for like an hour. And I would like,
No
wife would get
wonder
all
you
mad,
would
like,
go
where
door
are you?
knocking all the time. You would just go
Yeah,
get
I go there,
loaded.
like, yeah, I'm
And
going to the bar. It's basically
yeah.
you go to the bar, you go hang out. And so that's what I love about Austin is like, coming from California, I never talked to my neighbors. I never did. And now everybody's so friendly, like it. And I tell a lot of my California clients, it's like, hey, be prepared for people to be nice. And you'd be like, whoa, what's going on? I
What
had
the
a
heck?
client literally move into my neighborhood, and we're really good friends now, but he's like, dude, everybody in this neighborhood is so incredibly nice. What's wrong? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's how it is.
Yeah. Do y'all see a lot of short-term rentals? Matt was asking about short-term rentals
Yeah.
near Samsung.
Near Samsung. So here's the deal, Matt. If you want to do short-term rentals, you're going to have to go to Williamson County, which thankfully that's where Taylor is, because the city of Austin doesn't allow, they're not giving any more permits for short-term rentals to do Airbnbs.
You just
If
sounded
you're going to
super
do,
Canadian with permit. Permit.
yeah, I've been
Sorry.
talking to Brad too much. So, but if you move out towards Taylor and I would imagine you're probably going to have to, you asked the question earlier, I would imagine you're probably going to have to buy 2 or 3 acres and put in quite a few of those, like, small, tiny homes and do Airbnb like that. That would be killer. Like, I would definitely recommend doing something like that.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate all of your knowledge.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
Just type in my name in YouTube, Jeremy Knight, and you will find me rather quickly. You can go to my website, austinighthomes.com. Those are the places people find me. Instagram at the real Jeremy Knight. It's right there. The real is because my brokerage is real, and there is another Jeremy Knight who's not as cool as I am. So I'm sure he's a cool
The
dude.
jury's still out on that one, but dude, I appreciate
He's a
you
cool
hopping
dude.
on here.
Yeah.
I know how valuable your time is, so I
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
No,
I'll
I
let you
appreciate
get
it.
back to Turner. That's his doodle.
Yes, it's my doodle. How about, what does that say? Farm stays on homes already? What? I can't read that.
I don't know.
One thing, talking about interest rates, it's tough, is if you put a new home under contract, especially in Austin, in the middle of last year, it's still not built yet. So now what you were, pricing out as your payment has now increased probably $200 to $300 a month.
Interesting. That's true.
Pretty tough. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate
Let's
your
go.
time. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Later.